Mátela. ¿Qué?
Herr Kommandant, solo intento hacer bien mi trabajo.
Ya, y yo el mío. No, no. Mátela aquí, bajo mi responsabilidad.
Hará falta algo más que esto.
Seguro que tienes razón.
The film is based upon this book, right?
Yeah, that's right.
This book, Schindler's List. Now, as Mr. Zündel said, this book is a work of fiction.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, I'm just going to take the liberty to read part of it here for my audience. This book, in the beginning, in the back, and front cover, says this is a work of fiction. Now, think what that... Well, let me read it to you here. This is in the very front cover. It says, this book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. It also says this. It says, any resemblance to actual events or locales or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Now imagine, we've got in America today this Schindler's List being shown to school children as if it's the truth, and the author right away says, hey, this whole thing is imagination. We made it up. It's fiction.
Yeah, we have governors of states like New Jersey and California actually decreeing that school students must go and see the film. They have over 30,000 teaching guides already shipped out. It is an amazing thing to me that we are trying to teach our children about a historical event, alleged historical event, based on a prize-winning novel.
Well, let me read another one in the back. Let me give you another one here. It says, in regards to fiction, in addition to Schindler's List, which won the book's prize, and the LA Times book award for fiction.
All Germans shown are stereotypical Hollywood creatures, kind of cut-out Nazis that beat people without motives, that execute people without cause, and we are corrupt in taking bribes. There's not a single German, even the hero of the film Schindler, for 95% of the film is basically a man without redeeming values, a womanizer, boozers, cheating on his wife, and so on. And yet, no minister speaks out, no teacher speaks out. And I did a whole week's of research in Toronto recently, and we found out that not only one class per school, they're taking history students into this film, a film based on a book which on the cover already says is a novel.
Here we have a film, ladies and gentlemen, Schindler's List, being shown to our school children as truth when it's based on the book that says this is a work of fiction. In other words, it's not true.
This film is vicious. It is destructive. And it is, as you said, pornographic. There is so much frontal nudity, so many bare breasts, so much sex, so many girls portrayed as floozies and call girls, and worse. The Philippine Film Censor Board banned it because of the amount of frontal nudity and basically pornography. And it's interesting that Steven Spielberg, the Jewish producer of this film, he said, you're going to show my film all. You're not going to be allowed to make one cut. And the Philippines insisted that they had regulations in place, that they were not going to corrupt their children and their society. And Spielberg pulled the film out of the Philippines because he wanted all this crudity and so on shown in the film. I'm going to bring you a Canadian expert about Platchow Camp, the place where Schindler's List supposedly was filmed or was taking place in the Second World War. John Ball, a Canadian geologist and expert in photo interpretation, especially aerial photo interpretation, obtained those photographs for me, made some drawings, computer-generated drawings, very interesting drawings. The photographs clearly show a totally different picture from what Hollywood wants to portray for us. And the photographs reveal that Commandant Goethe could impossibly have used his rifle and shot prisoners in a parade square or Appellplatz, because between his veranda and this parade square there were trees, bushes, actually a hill. He could not look down there, aim his rifle, and shoot these unsuspecting prisoners the way it is shown in Steven Spielberg's film. Platchow Camp was undoubtedly, like all other internment camps, be they in Canada, the United States, in Russia or in Germany a place where people were deprived of their freedom, and therefore not a nice place. Because freedom is something precious, let me tell you, because I have been behind bars because I dare to doubt the standard version of the Holocaust. So I have seen jails in Germany, in Austria, and in Canada. And so I understand that people who were inside those camps didn't like it. This was not a unique experience, not for Jews. It was shared by Germans, Russians, Poles, Canadians, Americans. Virtually all the people involved in the Second World War at one time or another had parts of their population, both civilian and military, inside camps.
And this is the drawing that I've just completed yesterday of the camp. This is February 28th, 1994 right now.
The aerial photos were taken by whom?
The aerial photos were taken by the German Air Force, doing reconnaissance through the area.
And are they considered as reliable as American aerial photos?
Oh, without question, the Allies went in and confiscated these photos directly after the war and have 1.2 million of them on file right now, and they're considered authentic. There's absolutely no question as to their authenticity.
So our viewers and listeners are not going to fall victim to doctored German photos. I want to establish that right from the beginning.
Absolutely not.
And let me ask you, you have experience in analyzing and interpreting aerial photos, and why?
My work started in the early 70s with aerial photos. I've worked for 20 years looking at aerial photos, interpreting exactly what is on them, and drawing maps from them to be able to show exactly whether it's buildings, factories, railroad tracks, rock formations, with my work as a geologist and with my work in aerial photography. So seen in the movie.
Let me ask you on some of the things. Mm-hmm. Here we see a wire fence going all around it. Are these guard towers?
I think what we'll do is describe, first of all, this is north here. Krakow is up in this direction here. This is the main road leading from Krakow to Tarnow. In this direction here. This is the main railroad station south of Krakow. 100-meter scale is right here, as you can see. This is a village right here, just south of the camp that is surrounded by the wire fence and the guard towers, 12 of them around the camp. Another village up here. These are farms on the outside of the village, up on a hill here, and the town of Platzau itself, the outskirts of it, right beside the railroad track. A rock quarry with factory buildings in front of it with high chimneys, and whether this is to process the material that came out of the quarry, we do not know, but I suspect that it would be.
Are there bushes, trees, shrubs impeding the view from the outside into the camp?
No. This is from the outside here into the camp. There is 2 parallel wire fences, and there is a clear view, unimpeded, from these scores of farmhouses here and village houses into the camp. The same thing here. I've drawn some trees on here along the road where they exist, and there's another small group here beside the rock quarry. Otherwise, no impediment to viewing.
Now, according to your scale, the first houses would be less than 100 meters away from the fence.
That's correct.
Without trees to impede them.
That's
so
correct.
That meant they could have heard shooting.
Mm-hmm.
They would have been alerted by shooting.
Certainly.
And they could have certainly looked in to see what the commotion was.
Certainly.
Now tell us, where is this famous villa of the camp commander Goethe?
Right here. This is identified during the trial, his trial in 1946 in Poland. This was identified as his villa, and it has been identified by as his villa with the famous veranda where he allegedly shot prisoners in the yard, which was used for roll call and meeting. This is the camp administration building, offices here, another small rock quarry here. It's interesting that the view from this villa and the balcony is impeded by a hill. This is a hill right here, quite a substantially high hill. My estimates initially were about 80 feet high, about 25 meters high. This hill is here. Therefore, it stops the view in this direction from this building right here, so that this area here is blocked. This area here is open to view down in here.
Which means where he is shown with his German Mauser carbine there, lazily leaning over, taking aim, shooting people in this square, actually would have been here. It was not possible for Goethe from that veranda to see these people.
Physical impossible. The only thing he could see from here and shoot, he could shoot in this direction here, or perhaps in this direction here, that small area there. He could not see or shoot in this direction. This is the front. This is the road coming past here, and from the rear, where the balcony was, he would just see a hillside here, leading up to the top of the hill right here, and then this is the flat area of the top of the hill right here. So the hill goes right up from here. So the conclusion is it's a physical impossibility to have used his rifle for target shooting of individuals in the camp from this balcony.
2 quick points. A, you watched Schindler's List, the film. What did you come away with?
I think the thing is that this is one of the reasons I went down here. What I remembered about the film was not Schindler, was not the people who he assisted. It was this man Goethe, and the cruelty, the barbaric cruelty he portrayed and exemplified as being not a Nazi, not even a commander, but being a German. This is what the movie's about. It's to give people in people's mind the idea that at this period, the most cultured, civilized people on earth suddenly became murderous barbarians, and with absolutely no conscience, no feeling at all. They were just out to murder and to kill Jews callously. And it's a very powerful film, and I could just see when I went the amount of people who were emotionally affected, especially girls, in the packed movie theater I was in.
Would you consider this a hate film?
It's one of the strongest pieces of hate film I've ever seen.
Hollywood is run by Jews. It's owned by Jews. Hollywood is run by Jews. It's owned by Jews.
It basically shows not a single decent German. They're all serving like robots, the most vicious, cruel system. There is more wanton shooting, more wanton beating, more dogs being set on people, more Jewish people being driven out of their homes. And there is violence towards women in that film, where this one German officer mercilessly beats this Jewish girl because he is sexually attracted to her but feels that he couldn't have sex with her, and instead he beats her mercilessly, right on the full screen. Women, German women and Polish women, are always shown like these sex objects in their shiny satin gowns with their nipples showing. They're showing stark naked frontal nudity. They're showing them in line-ups, stark naked men and women, and they're showing them in bed as a woman mounts Schindler. All this, and children from school are being taken as whole school classes into this film. He makes fun of marriage. Everything that he does, he corrupts. There is not a single Jewish person in that film that isn't noble, long-suffering, enduring, with religious Jewish ceremonies, and there isn't a single German in the film that is really worth anything. They show a conveyor belt taking bodies to a pile where now suddenly they're no longer burned in pits, they're burned on mountains of corpses. That's a new one. He also no longer shows gassing in the gas chambers with shower heads. The shower heads now, cunningly and shockingly to the audience, actually dispense water, not gas. And the gassing is kind of hinted at by people shuffling into an underground gas chamber. Historically, the film is totally inaccurate. It is morally corrupt. It is corrupting. It makes fun of the Christian religion. It makes fun of every segment of German society. It is basically a vicious, anti-German film. Also, Steven Spielberg is not a newcomer to making anti-German films. Those of you who have seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, or even the old Star Wars series will remember Darth Vader in his black German army-style helmet exaggerated so that even a blind person could see it, the relation, where his soldiers are called stormtroopers, where they carry ray guns, which are spray-painted German machine guns. I saw an interview by a Brazilian Jewish reporter called Marco Chiaretti, who met Mrs. Emilie Schindler, the wife of Oskar Schindler, who appears briefly in the film at the end in person when she visits the grave of Oskar Schindler together with other Jews in a cemetery in Israel. She's in a wheelchair in that particular part of the film, and in the article out of the Brazilian newspaper Ilustrada, there's nothing mentioned that she is crippled, which surprised me. And she says that they sabotaged the production of these things and made bad shells and bad bazookas, manufacturing shells worth millions of marks that go to the soldiers on the front who are trying desperately to save their fatherland from the invasion of Bolshevist hordes, and he sends them ammunition which doesn't fire. And he says to his Jewish accountant Stern, in one point in the moment, he said, "Stern, I would be very unhappy if one grenade left my factory that actually worked."
Stern, si alguna vez producimos un solo proyectil que se pueda disparar, me llevaré un disgusto.
Well, again, you can tell that maybe to the non-critical and not very well historically educated North American audience, but to a German who knows about the wartime situation and production methods. Of course, the Germans were alert to the fact that there was going to be sabotage in camps and in factories run by foreign labor. And so each shell, like each rifle, even parts of each rifle, had a number and a code so that you could check back and trace back who manufactured this particular shell, this particular gun, or this particular bazooka. And believe me, if other Hollywood films are correct, the brutal, vicious Nazi security service and Gestapo would quickly have tracked down who manufactured an inordinate number of shells that didn't work. And then she says something very peculiar. We were both German-speaking. I refer to myself as being an English-speaking person, but I am a German. And so if no German says I'm German-speaking, because it's the most obvious thing that a German is German-speaking, so already it would indicate that the Schindlers thought of themselves as something other than German. And then the peculiar thing happens in real life, not in the film, in real life. Schindlers flee, or leave, in quote, the Sudetenland as soon as Adolf Hitler comes into the Sudetenland. Now you must understand that the Sudeten Germans had been clamoring for 20 years to join the Greater German Reich, and in a plebiscite voted 99.5 or 99.8 to join Hitler Germany. And here the Schindlers apparently fled and left for Krakow in Poland. Now Krakow in Poland at that time was anti-German. The whole Polish border area was teeming with anti-German hatred. There were pogrom-like events taking place, and Germans were fleeing from Poland to Germany when they could. Certainly, the Polish authorities were not welcoming German refugees. So that would indicate that Schindler certainly was no Nazi, otherwise he would have stayed behind, if he was a German at all. Interestingly, in the film, Schindler from the very beginning wears a golden party pin, which was issued to only 100,000, if memory serves me correctly, of the oldest members of the Nazi Party, I think pre-1927. Now, how this young man, who was 20 years old, according to his gravestone, when all these events took place, how he got a golden party pin, that meant he was one of the absolute first Nazis. And then he fled from Germany, Hitler's Sudetenland, Germany, into Poland to set up a pots and pans factory. No wonder Mrs. Schindler says that the Keneally book was wrong and contains a great deal of invented material in answer to the question if it was a documentary or not. So you see, whenever you see these Hollywood films and movies, you have to be very critical in what they're telling you. Because if it's properly analyzed, Schindler very quickly becomes a Schwindler.